have they caused any specific catastrophic hits on any of the countries they've targeted? No, absolutely not. Israel is more or less invulnerable. One or two missiles may get through, but that's it. They are not showing that they are a power to be feared.
The American justification for the war actually seems to be changing all of the time. At first, regime change was emphasised, but now Iran's missiles are being cited as the main reason for the attacks. This is the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
The objectives of this operation are to destroy their ballistic missile capability and make sure they can't rebuild it, and make sure that they can't hide behind that to have a nuclear program. That's the objective of the mission. That said, abundantly clear, we would love for there to be an Iran that's not governed by radical Shia clerics. As I've said myself repeatedly for years, the leadership of that country does not reflect the people of Iran, and I think that's been pretty apparent in the protests that you've seen. If there's something we can do to help them down the road, we'd obviously be open to it, but that's not the objective.
Rubio also said in separate comments that Israel has been leading the running on this, and America are in support of Israel. It's an Israeli operation rather than a US operation, is what he seemed to be saying. Iran is fighting back, threatening to set any ship passing through the Straits of Hormuz on fire. So where are we from a military perspective? Francis Tusa is the editor at Defense Analyst, joins us now. Francis, morning to you.
Good morning, Stig.
Marco Rubio said that the hardest hits are yet to come. Trump has said something similar as well. What could that look like? What could a harder hit look like?
Well, what's been interesting in the initial stages as regards the American input is they were not basing their aircraft forward in the zone in Qatar. They'd pulled stuff back. They were using even bases in Crete for tankers because of the risks of Iranian ballistic missiles. I think what we will see, if they are managing to attrit Iranian defences, we will start seeing things move forward, back into Qatar, back into eastern Saudi Arabia, possibly even bases in northern Iraq. And you will then just see the intensity of the attacks rise massively, which, if you bear in mind, I think the figures of about the first 24 hours were that the United States had 900 sorties. That's pretty significant. So I think just the intensity will rise, more use of bombers. Yeah, so more attacks.
And how long can both sides keep it up? One of the interesting questions is how much gear do both sides possess? How much arms do they possess to keep up any form of a conflict at this pitch?
Well, if you were to look at, just in this case, of one particular bomb, the JDAM, the Joint Direct Attack Munition, the United States produce about 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 kits per year. So, and they've been doing this for forever, quite frankly, and they've not been dropping them at that sort of rate. So that type of munition, the United States and Israel will have plenty of. People have looked much more at, and this is very relevant, the stocks of the Patriot surface-to-air missile, which is going to be the main defensive weapon for the Gulf states. Israel has their own weapons. One of the problems is production rates in the States for this is about 500 to 600 a year. And if you look at the fact that 2 days ago, the United Arab Emirates was targeted by about 80 to 90 ballistic missiles, you get that type of attack rate happening across the region. You use your stocks of weapons up pretty quickly.
Just how threatening have the Iranians been? I'm interested in this because there's one narrative which is that they're sort of flailing, that they've obviously lost their leader and they've sort of sent out their missiles across the region. They've had an unsuccessful drone attack here in Cyprus, wherever. Have they shown that they've got military might at all, or have they shown their weakness in the last 48 hours?
I would say more weakness. Have they caused any specific catastrophic hits on any of the countries they've targeted? No, absolutely not. Israel is more or less invulnerable. One or two missiles may get through, but that's it. They are not showing that they are a power to be feared. The fact is, US and Israeli aircraft were operating inside Iranian airspace from the go, with basic impunity. Can
the Iranians close the Straits of Hormuz, do you think, for a period long enough for it to affect the global economy? That's what many people will be worried about today. Do they have the capacity to do that?
Um, that is more of a problem. I was talking with a colleague yesterday saying, I remember writing a story back in 1988 about the Iranians closing the Strait of Hormuz and people saying, why don't the Saudis build a pipeline across Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea so they don't have to use the Straits of Hormuz? And the same questions are coming up. The Iranians have got anti-ship missiles, but I think we should bear in mind there have been really, really heavy attacks by the Americans, basically destroying the Iranian fleet at Bandar Abbas. And I'm pretty certain they'll have been taking out anti-ship missile sites. So they will be trying to make sure that in the shortest possible time, tankers will be able to resume passage.
Yeah, and that's a critical thing for the world economy, isn't it? Francis, great to speak to you. Really interesting. Thanks for joining us. Since 1979, Iran has been an Islamic republic, but you might call it a Shia Islamic republic. 90% of the population are Shia Muslims, and it's the only country where Shia Islam is at the heart of the state. That contrasts with the countries Iran has attacked this week. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE and Qatar have Sunni majorities. Could understanding Islam's ancient split into Shia and Sunni help us understand the way the nations are lining up today? Ali Ansari is a professor of Iranian history at St Andrews University and author of Iran, A Very Short Introduction, which is a very good primer to the country's history. Ali joins us now. Ali, morning to you.
Morning.
The differences between Shia and Sunni Muslims might be rather arcane, but they're important, aren't they? They're important to how we consider the politics of the Middle East.
I think they're important as far as the state ideology of the Islamic Republic is concerned, and it certainly has, it certainly tried to draw on the support of various Shia communities around the region. I mean, that's why I think they probably attacked the eastern Saudi Arabia, because it has a large Shia population, not only to sort of disrupt the oil refinery, but also to sort of generate a bit of support. The same with Bahrain. Of course, Bahrain is a majority Shia country, but ruled by a Sunni minority. So there's been a lot of attempts to probably incite a bit of domestic problems, which, as far as we can see, has probably backfired quite badly on them, because obviously the Sunni powers are now deciding that their declared neutrality hasn't done them much good.
I don't really understand why Iran did that, because apart from the Shia Sunni thing you're talking about, because at a time where they're being attacked by Israel and America, why would you just want to wind up Saudi and Bahrain and the UAE at the same time?
Well, I mean, it's part of this sort of strategy, and I hesitate to dignify it with that term, really, but it's a sort of a strategy to obviously let the region burn, on the basis that, as people has explained, is that they would expect then the Sunni, Gulf allies of the United States to go to the Americans and say, please stop this pain. Now that that is an approach that they've been talking about, and it's certainly valid. I mean, they sort of think that the pain threshold among the Gulf Arabs is much, much lower than anyone else. But the point is that the way in which they've been flailing out and attacking almost everyone, including Oman, which was the most striking one, I mean, I have to say, has basically galvanized the Arab world, the Arab Sunni world, against them in a way that I don't think they fully anticipated. And certainly if the Saudis and the UAE get involved, I think the vast majority of their missiles and drones have been fired at the UAE, apparently, not Israel. I mean, it's quite astonishing in that level. So if that's the way they're going, they may, in my view, certainly engender a reaction they weren't entirely expecting. It comes really fundamentally from not actually a sectarian view. It's really what I might call an ethnic contempt. The ethnic contempt of the Persian for the Arab is what's going on here, and they sort of feel that the Arabs aren't up to it and don't have the sort of capability. And I suspect they may be in for a bit of a shock. So, it's a very odd. If the United States has taken a gamble, the Iranians have also taken a gamble. Let's put it that way.
We often talk about the protests in Iran, the very, very brave people who've been fighting against the regime. But Iran is a huge country of 90 odd million. Do we know the scale of a majority, if there is a majority, who want regime change, who want an end to a theocracy, who want to have some form of secularization of Iran? Is that known as a figure? Because we know there are significant protests, but there's 90 million people in Iran.
I know, but I mean, we can make assessments as to the level of public support, popular support that the regime has, and we can make some assessments from the level of election turnout really over the last 5 to 6 years, but also some of the surveys that have been done of the population in terms of religious belief and others. I mean, Iran is certainly probably the most secular country in the Middle East now. Recent surveys have indicated that only about 30% of the population actually, quote, self-identify as Shia Muslim, which is quite astonishing, actually. I mean, what the great achievement of the Islamic Republic is that it's basically killed organized religion in Iran. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's killed spirituality and other religious beliefs. I mean, one of the great booms in conversions is to Christianity, as it happens, but also Zoroastrianism and other more indigenous religions are gaining in popularity. So there is a distinct mood. What you have, of course, is you have 400,000 armed supporters of the regime versus a larger population that obviously isn't armed, but that balance may be changing in the next few weeks. I mean, that's the difference. The dynamic there is that if the United States and Israel, along with some of the Arabs, manage to degrade the capabilities of the IRGC and the Basij militia, then that balance of power, so to speak, within Iran changes. And we saw how close they came on the 8th and 9th of January. The regime itself said there was an existential threat. And that's why they unleashed such an extraordinary slaughter on the people in Iran. So they themselves have admitted that they are facing a very sort of rocky situation. And obviously, if they have less capability to fire back and are being shot at themselves, then again, that equation changes. So we have to be a little bit more open-minded.
So actually regime change, yes, I'm so interested you say this. Actually, regime change from the air in that context is not impossible, because Keir Starmer said you can't achieve regime change from the air. But what you're saying is regime change from the air, which knocks out some military capability when you have a secularized population that might be on the uprising, then that would actually be a possibility.
That's the difference. I mean, that's the strategy you see, of course, but it is a gamble. I mean, let's not underestimate. I mean, the idea is would the Iranian population and an angry Iranian population rise up as they had done in January? And of course, that's the sort of the estimate. And I do agree. I mean, I think Keir Starmer's view was highly legalistic in its sort of analysis, and he obviously was trying to get out of a sticky corner as far as he was concerned. But I think people need to be a little bit more imaginative as to what's going on. Iran is a very different country to Iraq or Syria or Libya. There are different traditions there. There are different traditions of democratic activism and political activism. We've had, years, if not decades, of protests and uprisings in Iran. You've had a eroding of the political economy. The economy is in very bad shape. The government is certainly not legitimate. And do bear in mind, by the way, that all the figures and pictures that you're getting and are being rebroadcast on Western news stations of crowds in Iran are all being produced by the Iranian state television. I mean, there's no independent verification of this. The internet is down. And we simply are reproducing these photos of large crowds without really any independent verification of what's going on. Nobody really knows what is going on internally in the country, certainly outside Tehran. And we have to be very, very careful about making, jumping to conclusions.
I think this has been such a useful conversation for us all to have to try and sort of reset what we think about the country. Ali, great to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's Ali Ansari there, Professor of Iranian History at St Andrews University.